Hey guys, so tonight I have an interesting video to do. I have been wanting to do a video talking about like my struggles with depression and all that. My troubles with depression began in 8th grade. I was very brutally bullied by a group of 3 boys. They spent an entire year attacking me on a daily basis. One minute they'd be saying how ugly I was, and like from head to toe they would list my flaws and how they just couldn't stand looking at me. One time when our teacher was out of the room, they announced to the whole class that they wouldn't screw me without a paper bag over my head because I was too ugly to look at. And then the next minute they would be sexually harassing me. They would come up behind me in the halls, grab my butt, grab my chest, whisper in my ear that they were going to rape me in the woods after school. And this went on for an entire year, and I didn't tell anyone aside from my friends. It wasn't until like the last month of the school year that I finally did something about it. The boys started throwing things at my head. I just snapped. I just stood up, started like just tears just streaming down my face, and I just like ran out of the room. And like the guys, they got really scared because they knew I was going to go tell someone, and they were like, what? Where are you going? What's wrong? I didn't mean it. And I just like, you know, totally ignored them. And I went to the counselor's office, and I told her sort of what was happening. I didn't tell her everything because the boy who was the absolute meanest, who like really sticks out in my mind, I knew that he was going to be going to a private high school, and that if he were to get suspended or expelled or anything, that he would be kicked out of that school. So I didn't want to be stuck with him for my entire high school experience, so I didn't tell her about the sexual harassment. I only told her about them calling me ugly and making fun of me. But so anyway, after putting up with that abuse for an entire year, it really took a toll on my self-esteem, and I just became an insecure wreck. Like in 8th grade, I dressed in all American Eagle and just kind of like, you know, didn't have like a real style, was just kind of like a little preppy or whatever. Well, in my freshman year of high school, I changed and started dressing like, you know, all in Hot Topic. That was when Hot Topic first came out, and I thought it was so cool, and like just ringed my eyes in black eyeliner. I don't know, I guess I was trying to get attention off of me, and because my mom once asked me, why do you put on so much eyeliner? Like, she was really mad because I looked like a freak or whatever, and she's like, why do you put on so much eyeliner? And I was like, to scare people. And she's like, I'm gonna take away your eyeliner then, if you don't stop doing that. But anyway, so yeah, I was trying to like push people away because I think I had such a self-loathing and everything, and I just changed. My whole personality changed, and I started self-harming. I started doing it on my arms at first, and I went to my ballet class, and I had band-aids all over my arms, like in various different places, and I told my teacher that I fell off a bike. Oh yeah, because falling off a bike can make you have band-aids like covering all over your arms. But anyway, so I guess she called my mom, and my mom came and picked me up and cried and sobbed. It was like, why would you do this to yourself? And I ended up being put in the psych ward at the hospital for 12 days. That was my first day, and that was where I got my first psychiatrist. And I got diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and social anxiety. Okay, so for bipolar 2, mania, what it is, you're not happy, you're not wild, it's basically it's like a heightened state of depression, like for me, when I'm manic, I'm irritable, I'm anxious, like things like bother me more, even little sounds, like if the phone rings a lot at work and I'm feeling manic that day, like it really bugs me and I want to claw my like flesh off and scream at everyone, but I have to control myself and not do that. But yeah, I just, you know, I get like I get heart palpitations with anxiety, and I get irritable, and just like little things will bug me type thing. And I tend to be more like psychotic when I'm manic. Like that's when I think of suicide and self-harm and things of that nature. Later in life, I was also diagnosed as borderline, which is very similar to bipolar, and can be confused, and a lot of people are misdiagnosed. But actually, my doctor that I have now says he doesn't even like to diagnose people as strictly borderline because it is just so hand in hand with bipolar 2, and that bipolar 2 comes first. But anyways, my diagnosis is bipolar type 2 with borderline tendencies and social anxiety. So yeah, I got my first psychiatrist and hospitalization when I was 14, my freshman year of high school, and started taking medications for it all, like antidepressants, antipsychotics. You know, antipsychotics, that's a scary term, but it basically just means it's like a mood stabilizer. It keeps you from having, well, it technically is supposed to keep you from having suicidal thoughts and things like that. After my sophomore year of high school, I had to switch schools because I was just so miserable and deathly afraid of everyone at this huge public high school I was going to with like 2,000 students. I would cry myself to sleep, and not just like tears, but like screaming in my pillow, cry myself to sleep every night. And every morning when I woke up before school, I was just so deathly afraid of going. Then I ended up switching schools at the end of my sophomore year. I had to switch to a school, it's called an alternative school. It was for kids who had emotional disorders. I ended up doing really well towards the end of my senior year, and I even, at graduation, I won an award for like most improved person, like basically being the craziest and coming out like, you know, pretty stable. And I remember when I won the award, I went up to like, you know, kind of give a little speech or whatever, and I was like, I'd like to thank my school, my parents, and heavy doses of medications for getting me where I am today. And of course, like the whole crowd like laughed and everything. Actually, my worst years were after high school as far as my mental health goes. I took, like, I don't know, I never did any research. That's the thing with bipolar is and borderline. Bipolar and borderline, you're very impulsive. So you don't think things through and you just do them. And so I never like researched how to kill myself or anything like that. I just did it. So I was like, oh, I'll take like 100 Tylenol, you know, and I swallowed it. And I think I can honestly say that this first time, like looking back on everything now, this first attempt was probably my, the only time I really truly wanted to die. I remember I took the pills and then went to bed. And back then I was very sick. I was throwing up all the time, and this wasn't like shit, he's digging through my purse, like completely tearing apart everything in my purse. You see that? Look at that. He's like taking everything out. Evil. Yeah, so I took the pills, went to bed thinking I was gonna die, and then within 45 minutes I got violently ill, and I went and threw up in the toilet. But the thing was, I was very sick back then. I eventually developed bulimia, but this was not bulimia. This was before all that happened, and it was totally uncontrollable. I just threw up all the time for a year, and I had every medical test under the sun. I had a stomach CAT scan, a brain CAT scan, an upper endoscopy, a colonoscopy, a barium enema, a test where they had to like make food with dye go down my stomach and watch how it dissolved, blood, countless blood tests, everything, and I ended up getting my gallbladder removed because when they did this stomach CAT scan, they found that I had gallstones, and they thought that was why I was throwing up. So I had my gallbladder removed, but then I kept throwing up all the time, and anyways, we never really did figure out what was wrong. My psychiatrist basically chalked it up to, apparently with bipolar, bipolar patients can just have a tendency to have like really upset stomach a lot and stuff like that, and so that's what they chalked it up to, and eventually I grew out of it after a year. But anyways, so when I went to throw up the pills that night, my parents didn't even get up because they were so used to hearing me throw up, like, and that they knew like that was just a usual thing with me. I'd go back to bed or whatever. All I remember next is then later waking up with my head on the bathroom scale, and I woke up and I was like, what the fuck? At this point I'm thinking, okay, well clearly I'm not going to die now, but what if those pills are doing something to my like innards, and I, you know, like something really bad happens and I die in a really excruciating way. So I went and I was like, Mom, listen, this is what happened. And of course, you know, I landed myself in the hospital again, the psych ward. And then I ended up getting, it's called ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. So basically electric shock therapy. And everybody is always really scared when they hear that, because you think of like old school, like scary movies where people were getting electrocuted and shocked, you know, and that is what I was getting. But they've really advanced the procedure now. So what they actually put you, they put you to sleep and they paralyze you so that your body doesn't jerk around at all. So first I had unilateral shock therapy, which means one direction of the brain. And after like the first 2 weeks, I ended up trying to kill myself again. That time I took like 300 pills. And I know this because I take pills so frequently that I can take like a handful of 20 at a time. And so every time what I would do was like put, you know, a certain number in my hand, swallow, swallow. So that's how I know how many. Then they switched, instead of doing it unilaterally, they did it bilaterally, which means both directions in the brain. And I personally had a very, very hard time with electroconvulsive therapy. I had pretty much every side effect you can have. Extreme memory loss. I would wake up, I'd have horrible, horrible headaches, migraines for days afterward. I would sleep all day afterward. Like I would sleep like a full 24 hours after each treatment. And I had really extreme memory loss. My mom said that one time I asked her, who do I hang out with? Like, who are my friends? I can't think of anybody that I talk to, or who do I hang out with? And one time I said, why was I in the hospital? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I did not remember whatsoever, like, what was happening to me. Like, my mom was like, well, you've been really depressed. And I was like, I have? Why? And she's like, well, I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna tell you. You know, if you forgot it, you forgot it. Yay! So anyway, I did the bilateral shock therapy for the rest of the 3 months. And it did nothing really, and I have long-term memory loss. I ended up, like, I know as the months progressed that year, like I know for the next 2 or 3 years, I was really, really bad about like forgetting things and repeating myself to friends. Like one time I told my friend a story about having keloids 5 different times without realizing it, and she's like, you know, Laura, you've told me this story like 5 different times, and I had no idea. Like that, it took several years to get over that. But I do still have permanent like memory loss, like especially from around that time. Like I know I've come across people in the mall who will come up to me saying, Laura, oh my God, it's so good to see you. Like I haven't seen you since such and such, and I literally, it's not that I just don't remember their name or, you know, something. I literally have no fucking clue who they are. And I'm just like, hi, yes, good to see you too. And she said some sort of word that clearly would have been like an inside joke, but I had no idea what she was talking about. Like, it had to have been some sort of inside joke we had in high school, but I didn't know who she was. I didn't know how I knew her. I didn't know why she was bringing up inside jokes and what they meant. Because of what I went through with it, I don't really recommend it, but at the same time, I hate saying that because I have seen people where ECT does wonders for. It does work for some people, and the reason they use it, they only use it for people who are extremely, extremely severely depressed to the point where it is dangerous for them, like they are either a harm to themselves or others, and nothing else will get them out of that funk as quickly as ECT. So that was when I was 18, and then I moved out and like got my own, well, I moved into an apartment with some friends, and then I met my first long-term boyfriend, who was a complete sociopath. Like, yeah, my first boyfriend I was with for 3.5 years. And he was very emotionally abusive. He was just a really bad person. He actually was like abusive to animals. Like, I'm not even gonna go into how extreme. I was with him for 3.5 years because I was very brainwashed when I met him. I had just gotten done with ECT. I was like an emotional wreck trying to figure out who I was, and I think the fact that just like someone was paying attention to me, I just like fell in love with him and became obsessed with him, and you know, our whole relationship was tumultuous. Both times he broke up with me was like in the worst possible ways. Like the first time he said that he never loved me, I was a mistake. You know, just that I was ugly, that I was too sick all the time. Like, he never cared about me whatsoever. And the second time he broke up with me, he did it through text. Didn't explain anything, just left me hanging completely, so I ended up trying to kill myself again. Took 600 pills, and at this point my parents had gotten really lax about keeping things in the safe, so I got like actual prescription drugs in there and everything. And my mom was gone, and I ended up passing out in the bathroom, and she found me. Like, she came home, called the ambulance, and the ambulance took me to the hospital, and I ended up in the ICU for a day and a half. It was really a huge mistake, and I just was so impulsive and irrational and so angry and so betrayed. That's the mind of a bipolar borderline person. You go to extremes in less than a second. So after that, I got into burlesque, which was like a total random thing. I just started taking burlesque classes, and right away my teacher was a very popular, she's very popular all over the world, but she was like the main head honcho burlesque person in St. Louis, and she was, you know, doing the classes, and she's like, you know, you've got real talent, like, you know, I want you to be in my troupe. So I was so lucky because, like I said, I had danced my whole life, and so she could see that I had dancing talent, and she just started this troupe. From there, I ended up doing professional burlesque for 2.5 years, and it was some of the best years of my life, and it came in a point in my life when I needed it so desperately. I needed to get my mind off my breakup and all my turmoil. It gave me like a boost of confidence. It gave me like a hobby to pursue. It gave me happiness, like endorphins. It made me meet new people. I made so many new friends. I always had something to do, somewhere to go to keep my mind off of everything, which I stress to anyone. That is the #1 thing after a breakup or when you're just really depressed in general, to keep your mind occupied. Go out with your friends, get a hobby, do what you have to do to keep your mind occupied. And we ended up touring around the US. I got to perform in a lot of, you know, several cities and several festivals. I got to perform in a lot of places, and it was really fun, and it was such a great experience, and I really owe it to burlesque for changing my life. You know, after burlesque I met a guy who I was with for 1.5 years, and he was a really good guy, but he was had a lot of issues, and I broke up with him, and that was like the best decision I ever made for myself, because he was very insecure and controlling. And I got out of that relationship and was single for a year. Best thing I ever did. I went and got a job, the job that I'm working at, which I've been at now for a year and a half, which is the longest I've ever had a job. I moved out immediately on my own. I have lived in this place for over like a year and a half now. I got my 2 cats, and I just like really gained self-worth and self-respect and confidence, and you know, I just became a stronger person and realized I didn't need a man to function, that I could be happier by myself than I ever could have been with anyone else. I of course still struggle. I still take medications on a daily basis. I have to go up and down throughout the months with how much of high dosage I take. You know, like I get worse in the winter, you know, my mood fluctuates. I mean, that's the name of the game with bipolar and borderline. I mean, that's going to be how I am for the rest of my life. But I have learned how to manage things better, and I have learned better coping mechanisms. Now, when I'm depressed, I don't internalize it and take it out on myself. I write about it, I tell people, I go to people for help immediately. I also strive to be as positive as I can. I used to be like the world's most negative life fun sucker ever, and now I try really hard to always be positive. I will write down in a journal. For the longest time, I wrote down in a journal every day all the positives that were happening in my life. And you find more and more things to pile onto that list. It's the little things in life that make you happy, you know, and eventually you realize that there are a lot of good things in your life that are worth living for. I met like a whole community of people on Tumblr, which I know this sounds so silly. It's like a website, a social networking website. But I found a whole community of people who had been through really hard situations but still remained so positive, and they really changed me, and I owe my life to them also. And I am a completely different person from even just like 2 years ago. Like, you wouldn't recognize me if you knew me back then, because I was a miserable person, and I'm not anymore. You know, like I said, my parents trusted me enough to move out on my own. I'm on, although I take plenty of meds, I'm technically on the least amount. Like, I used to take like 5 different types of antidepressants at once. Like, it was ridiculous. And now I'm on 1 antidepressant and 1 antipsychotic. And then I take an anxiety medicine as needed. I hope you guys liked this, and I know it's probably a lot to take in and hard and weird, but that's my life.